They pulled something out of the ground at a depth of 150 feet and went completely silent. Not the silence of disappointment, the silence of men staring at something they cannot explain. Old wood, old iron, and leather, actual worked leather, from deeper in the earth than any tool they had ever dropped into Oak Island had ever reached before. And when the laboratory dated what came up from that depth, the number on the report did not match any theory anyone had brought to that island. Not the pirates, not the Templars, not the Freemasons, not any of the comfortable stories the last 2 centuries of treasure hunters had told themselves to keep digging. What the dating said was older, stranger. And if it is right, it means that whoever buried something beneath that small island off the coast of Nova Scotia did it at a time when, according to every history book ever written, nobody was supposed to be there at all. Stay with me, because this is the story of what is actually happening on Oak Island right now. Not the legend, not the hype, but the physical, testable, dug-up truth that is making even the most hardened skeptics go quiet. Let's start with what most people know, because you need the foundation before the ceiling can shock you. Oak Island is a small forested island off the southern shore of Nova Scotia, Canada, barely a mile long. Covered in red oaks and scrub, it looks like nothing. It has swallowed more money than most countries spend on infrastructure, and it has given almost nothing back. The story begins in 1795, when a teenager named Daniel McInnes walked into a clearing on the eastern end of the island and found a circular depression in the earth, maybe 13 feet across. Directly above it, hanging from the sawed-off branch of an old oak tree, was a ship's tackle block, the heavy iron and wood pulley system used to hoist enormous weights. The conclusion wrote itself for a boy raised on stories of Captain Kidd and Atlantic pirates. Something heavy had been lowered into that hole, something worth hiding. McInnes went back the next day with 2 friends, shovels, and the absolute certainty that they were about to become rich. They were not about to become rich. What they found instead was something that would consume the attention of the civilized world for the next 230 years and counting. 2 feet down, flat quarried flagstones that don't exist naturally on the island. Someone had carried them there. Below the stones, the walls of the pit were scored with pickaxe marks, human tool marks. At 10 feet, a solid oak platform spanning the full width of the shaft, sealed with clay. At 20 feet, another platform. At 30, another. Each one placed deliberately, each one a sealed floor hiding whatever waited below. The boys dug until their bodies gave out and then went home. They had not found gold. But they had found something more powerful. Proof. Proof that someone, at some unknown point in the past, had gone to extraordinary effort to bury something and had built a layered, engineered structure to protect it. You do not construct platforms every 10 feet in a shaft if you are hiding pocket change. That kind of engineering is for something you want protected for centuries. The expeditions that followed across the 1800s added layer after astonishing layer to the mystery. At 90 feet down, diggers found a flat stone inscribed with strange symbols, reportedly later translated as saying 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Whether that translation was real or invented later is still argued, but the diggers didn't need translation. They had already found coconut fiber, actual coconut husk material, the kind of fiber used for packing and rope making, on an island off Nova Scotia, hundreds of miles from the nearest tropical coastline. Someone had shipped that material across an ocean to line this hole. At 90 feet, they pried up the stone and kept going. And then the island played the card it had been holding since the beginning. Overnight, 60 feet of seawater flooded the pit, not seeping groundwater, salt water, rushing in as fast as they could bail it. The shaft had been booby-trapped. Somewhere between the pit and a cove, now called Smith's Cove, hidden flood tunnels had been engineered to channel the ocean itself into the shaft the moment someone dug too deep. A natural burglar alarm made of Atlantic tides. And it worked perfectly. It worked in 1804, it worked in 1849, it worked in 1860, it worked in 1930. It kept right on working into the 21st century. 6 people have died on Oak Island in the search. 6. There's an old local prophecy that 7 must die before the treasure gives itself up. That number hangs over the place like a storm front that never quite breaks. Now, here is where the story stops being history and starts being something much more urgent. Because what has happened on Oak Island in the last few years, specifically in Season 12 of The Curse of Oak Island on the History Channel, which aired from November 2024 through May 2025, is different from anything that came before. Not because the treasure was pulled from the ground and held up for cameras. It was not. Anyone who tells you the treasure has been definitively found and confirmed by the History Channel and the way that phrase sounds, a chest opened, a hoard counted, a mystery solved, is telling you the clickbait version, not the truth. But what the team found and confirmed in Season 12 has genuinely changed what experts believe is down there. And the changes are disturbing in the best possible way. The Lagina brothers, Rick, who has been obsessed with Oak Island since reading about it in a magazine as a child, and Marty, the Texas oil man who put up the money to buy access to the island, have been leading the modern search for over a decade now. In Season 12, they deployed a technology that no previous searcher had access to. 7-foot diameter steel caissons driven by a Canadian company called Solitanche Bashi, capable of reaching depths the old shaft and pump method never could. They sank these massive steel tubes into the ground in the Money Pit area, the zone directly above where all the engineering from the 1800s had pointed. Shaft after shaft, deeper than anyone had ever gone with a controlled, documented dig. And what came up inside those caissons at depths exceeding 150 feet stopped the team cold. Old wood, worked timber, iron, and leather. Real, genuine worked leather from more than 150 feet underground in a zone that had been sealed under flooding and collapse for centuries. The wood wasn't the remnant of some previous searcher's equipment. The depths ruled that out. Previous searchers never got this deep with anything that left wooden debris this far down. This was old. This was original. This was from whoever built the thing in the first place. But that was not the most unsettling find of Season 12. That title belongs to what happened when one of the team's largest caissons, shaft TB1, collapsed into a massive underground void, an open space, a hollow in the bedrock beneath the Money Pit that no survey had fully mapped before. The team's geological consultant, Dr. Fred Michael, had a name for the zone he believed held the highest concentrations of gold and silver. He called it the Golden Egg, and when TB1 collapsed into that void, what the collapse revealed was something even more significant than a void. It revealed the solution channel, a natural geological feature, a dissolution cavity in the limestone bedrock, running deep beneath the Money Pit area. And here is why that matters enormously. The team's new working theory, supported by the physical evidence pulled from the caissons, is that whoever originally built the Oak Island system did not just dig a shaft and flood it. They used the solution channel, this naturally occurring deep cavity in the bedrock, as the actual hiding place. The original depositors may have lowered their treasure down into a geological feature that was already there, already naturally protected by its depth and by the flooding that could be engineered above it. Not a vault they built entirely from scratch, but a natural vault they found, and then fortified with everything the flood tunnels could throw at any searcher dumb enough to dig. That is a fundamentally different picture of what is down there. And it is a picture drawn from physical evidence, not theory. Meanwhile, in Season 12, the team also sent members to the island of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea, not a random trip. In previous seasons, artifacts had been recovered on Oak Island that pointed, shakily but persistently, toward a connection to the Knights of Malta, the medieval military order descended from the Knights Hospitaller. And in Season 12, an archaeologist named Matthew Balzan examined a pickaxe head that had been pulled from 145 feet below the surface of Oak Island. His conclusion, stated on camera, was that the tool was a basin, a standard quarrying implement used specifically by Maltese stonemasons and quarry workers for centuries. Not a North American tool, not a colonial-era British tool. A Mediterranean quarrying implement found 145 feet underground on a Nova Scotia island. You sit with that for a moment, and it does not sit alone. Because in other seasons, the team had already pulled up other artifacts that refused to fit the expected timeline. A Portuguese coin struck no later than 1371. Carbon dating on leather found in the swamp that reached back into the 1100s. A stone foundation in the swamp area that, when analyzed by a researcher using stellar alignment dating, essentially using the position of stars as a historical clock, was estimated to have been constructed around 1236, before Columbus, before any European settlement in that part of the New World that history officially acknowledges. A Portuguese coin from the 1300s, leather from the 1100s, a stone structure from 1236, a Maltese quarrying tool at 145 feet, and worked timber with leather and iron from deeper than any previous documented dig had ever reached. None of this, taken individually, closes the case. Good archaeology never works from single data points, and anyone presenting any one of these finds as a smoking gun is cutting corners with the truth. The island has been dug and redug and contaminated by more than 2 centuries of searcher activity, and skeptics, serious ones with legitimate credentials, point out correctly that every single find could have a mundane explanation. A Portuguese coin washes ashore on the Atlantic coast in ways that have nothing to do with a buried vault. Carbon dates on organic material in a swamp can reflect the age of the material before it was used, not when it was placed. Single pickaxe identifications by a single expert are exactly as strong as the next expert's disagreement. All of that is true. All of those cautions are fair. And the honest answer to the question in the title of this video, has the treasure been found? Has History Channel confirmed a discovery? Is nuanced in a way that the internet usually refuses to allow. Here is the truth. The treasure, defined as a chest or vault full of gold, jewels, manuscripts, or whatever the original depositors placed at the bottom of that pit, has not been opened, retrieved, or confirmed on camera. Season 12 ended without that moment. The finale, titled Uplifting Discoveries, showed the team having installed a new 7-foot diameter shaft called TOT-1, the one thing, positioned to reach the solution channel in the following season. They were close in a way they had never been before, but close is not there. What has been confirmed, physically, testably, documented on camera and by laboratory analysis, is this. Something was built on Oak Island by human hands at an engineering level that still functions today. The flood system still floods. The solution channel is real and has been mapped. Worked materials from depths below 150 feet confirm original human activity at the lowest levels of the system. Artifacts that do not fit the conventional timeline of Nova Scotia's history have been recovered in controlled conditions. And the Chappelle Vault, the name given by searchers to a chamber they believe exists in the bedrock below the solution channel, where a team member named Chappelle believed he heard hollow sounds during drilling in the 1930s, remains unexcavated, unrefuted, and directly in the path of the work planned for the upcoming season. Season 13 of The Curse of Oak Island is confirmed. 25 new episodes are set to premiere on November 3rd, 2026, with filming already underway on the island as of this year. The team returns with the TOT-1 shaft already in the ground. They return with the mapped coordinates of the solution channel. They return with the Chappelle Vault as the target. And they return with something no previous generation of searchers ever had. A physical map of what is below them, drawn by sonar and ground-penetrating radar, and the caisson samples of Season 12. They are not digging blind anymore. For the first time in the history of this search, they know approximately where they are going. Whether they reach it this season or the season after, whether the water wins again or the steel shaft finally holds, whether the Chappelle Vault contains what the evidence suggests or turns out to be a natural void with nothing inside, those are the questions that will drive the next chapter of the longest treasure hunt in human history. And those questions are genuinely open in a way they have never been before, because the team is genuinely closer than anyone has ever been. Not closer in the way the show has promised closeness every season for 12 years, closer in the way that physical shafts sunk to 150 feet, and a mapped geological target makes you closer. That is a different kind of closer. Now let us zoom out, because the real question underneath all of this has never actually been about gold. The question that keeps people staring at their screens at midnight is a different one. Who? Who did this? Who had the knowledge, the resources, the manpower, and the motivation to engineer a flood-defended vault on an uninhabited island off Nova Scotia at a time when the history books say the place barely existed on European maps? The pirate theory has always been weak. Pirates buried treasure in a hurry by running men. They did not spend months turning a cove into a hydraulic system. The Knights Templar theory is romantic, but relies on a fleet that vanished from a French harbor in 1307, sailing across an unknown ocean with no documented record of arrival. The Francis Bacon theory, that the original Shakespeare manuscripts were sealed in mercury and buried to protect the secret of who really wrote those plays, has the trace mercury to recommend it, and not much else. The Vikings were on the northeast Atlantic coast. Evidence is real, but Norse burial practices don't look like this. Nothing about Oak Island looks like standard historical behavior from any known civilization operating in the Atlantic world. And this is why the leather carbon dated to the 1100s matters so much, and the Portuguese coin from before 1371, and the stone structure estimated at 1236. Because if those dates hold, if they survive, challenge and peer review and independent replication, then whoever built on Oak Island was operating 2 to 3 centuries before Columbus, in a part of the world the European record insists was unknown and unvisited. That is not a small revision to the history books. That is a hole blown through the wall of accepted history large enough to walk a ship through. And the people most qualified to evaluate it, the archaeologists, the material scientists, the geologists, are not dismissing it. They are asking for more data, which is exactly what you would expect from serious scientists confronting evidence that is real enough to require serious response, but not yet overwhelming enough to require a conclusion. Here is where the story actually stands, stripped of every layer of hype and hope and network television drama. A vault of some kind exists beneath Oak Island. The engineering that protects it is real, functional, and was built by human hands with a level of knowledge that does not fit any casual or accidental explanation. Recent excavation has produced materials from the original builders at depths previously unreachable. Artifacts recovered from the island span a timeline that, if the dating is accurate, predates European settlement of that coastline by centuries. A geological solution channel in the bedrock beneath the money pit has been mapped and is the primary target for the next season's dig. And a chamber believed by decades of searchers to exist at the lowest accessible level of the system, the Chappelle Vault, remains intact, undisturbed, and positioned directly above where the team will next push their drill. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, a great deal. 2 centuries of treasure hunters tore that island apart looking for what they could find by digging harder. The Lagina team, armed with sonar and core drilling and caissons and a Maltese archaeologist in a carbon dating laboratory, found what the island had been hiding not by digging harder, but by listening to what the ground was telling them. And the ground has been telling them something extraordinary. Whether the vault at the bottom of Oak Island holds gold, manuscripts, religious relics, or something that no existing theory has yet imagined, the next dig may finally produce the answer that 229 years of searchers and 6 dead men and more wasted fortunes than can be counted have been chasing. Because for the first time, the team knows where it is going. They have mapped the machine. They have found the natural vault beneath the engineered one. They have lowered a 7-foot steel shaft to within reach of the deepest chamber anyone has ever had evidence to believe in. And Season 13 starts in November 2026. The water still rises when you dig too deep on Oak Island. The flood system that a genius engineer built at a time nobody is supposed to have been there still works today as well as it did the morning it swallowed the 1804 expedition's hopes and sent them home broken. But the people going back in November are not digging blind, and that changes everything. What they find, or what they don't find, will write the final chapter of the longest mystery in the history of the Western world. Or it will open another one, because that is the thing about Oak Island. Every answer it has ever offered has come wrapped in 3 new questions. And the question underneath all of them, the one that nobody has been able to answer for 2 centuries, is the one the Lagina team is now close enough to touch. What is at the bottom? What was worth building all of this to protect? And will the water let them reach it this time? Leave your theory in the comments. Subscribe so you're here when November arrives. Because if Season 13 delivers what the evidence of Season 12 is pointing toward, you do not want to miss it.